Hello, student. This is the guided project for Excel Chapter 2, and we're going to go through step by step. There will be a little bit of instruction, so you can follow along, or you can just skip straight to the step that you want. So the first step is to open the file, enable editing, which I already did. So the second step is to set the range names for the workbook. What does that even mean? What is a range name? Why do we need to set it? As you can see here, these are some preset variables that have already been set some values. So 10,000 is the loan amount, the loan term is 5 years, the rate is 4.5 per year, and then there are some other values that we're supposed to calculate. So what does range name setting do? So let's go ahead and start with this step and follow along, and then we'll see what it does. So select from B5 to C8, and then go to the Formulas tab and go Create from Selection and use left column. If the top row is selected, deselect it, but in my case, it's not selected, so that doesn't matter. We do the same thing for E5 to F7, Create from Selection, left column. So when we look at the name manager, we can see all these variables we just created. What does that mean? So if I ever wanted to use the value for loan amount in any other sheet in future, this is how I could do it. I can copy it from here, and then I can paste. And as you can see, that's the value. If I happen to change it here, if you look at it, what it says here is it's the student loan sheet, cell number C5. That's what the reference is. But now, because I've defined the range name, I can say loan amount and it pre-populates this value. And guess what? And that's the same value, but it's named named more descriptively. So if someone else in the future goes back and looks at your Excel file, student loan C5 makes less sense than loan amount. So that's the reason why we define range names and how it's helpful for the people to understand the files. So let me go ahead and delete that sheet. So I hope that makes sense. And we have verified in Name Manager that all these values are indeed set and they refer to the correct cell values. So we're going to go ahead and close this. Now, the goal of this project is to find out the monthly payment that a person is supposed to pay when he borrows a loan amount of not 12,000, I think it is. That's the loan amount, and that's the loan term and the rate. How much is the payment per month? Excel has a pre-built function called PMT. There are two ways we can do formulas. We can go to insert function, or if you know what category it is, you can look for the category and then look for that function name, which is here. Or you could do an insert function and type PMT and then hit go. And then select that and it will tell you what to do. Or as you get more comfortable, you can start typing the function name and then it will tell you all the variables you're supposed to provide for that function to work. So for ease, let's start off with an interface. So I'm going to do the insert function, use the payment function. So the rate, the bold values say that these are required. These are optional. So let's see what are the required. So I definitely need to know the rate which the loan amount is calculated. So that is the rate, but that's an annual rate. That's an APR, annual percentage rate. So we're going to divide it by 12 so we know per month. Oh, I got too hasty. Let me go back and do it again. So the rate is that 12. The NPER is the number of payments. So what is the loan term? The loan term is for 5 years. that translates to 5 times 12. That is 60 months. And then what is the principal that you're borrowing? That's 10,000. So once you have all these values, it calculates the payment. But this payment is calculated based on the perspective of the person who's borrowing. But if you are the lender and you want to see positive values of payments, you put a negative sign in there, and it'll show you the dollar amount of 186.43 that as an end user you are supposed to pay. So let's go back and edit this function and see what it happens. So we see that our formula that we just put it in the interface looks like this in the formula bar: rate by 12, comma, loan term times 12, comma, loan amount. If I take out the negative, that's how it shows. It means a negative value. It's a minus 186.1843. So because we wanted it from the borrower's perspective, we're going to put a negative. So this is what it tells me. If I borrow a $10,000 loan for a loan term of 5 years at a rate of 4.5%, this is my monthly payment. So whenever you buy a loan, there's a total cost. There's some interest that you have to pay because of this interest rate. If it was a 0% interest, your total principal and your total loan amount is always going to be the same. But in this case, because we're paying some interest, let's find out how much that interest is. And in a very simple way, the interest would be your payment times the number of payments you made, which is 5 times 12. And that's a total payment. But there is some interest that's calculated minus, that's the loan amount. That would be the interest that you're paying. So if you're paying $10,000, if you're borrowing $10,000, that's your additional overhead to borrow that because of the interest rate. What is the total principal? The total principal would be, if you didn't subtract the loan amount from it, that would be the total principal. So times 5 times 12, that's the total principal. I did it right. I'm gonna have to go back and look. Just go ahead and mark all these done. I'm supposed to change it to accounting, so let me go back and do that. Total interest is payment loan term times 12 minus loan amount. Got that. I'll just say 1881. Am I supposed to format it? It's already formatted, so that's good. Payment times loan. Total interest. Okay, so I'm supposed to deduct the interest minus total interest. That gives me the total principal, which is ironically that's the loan amount. I could just say loan amount, but I don't know. And the last one is the total cost. The total cost is obviously the interest plus the principal. That's that. Do we have to do formatting? Okay, so now we have all our values here. Now we want to see the amortization schedule based on each month. So for month 1, what's the values? What's the interest? What's your payment amount? How much interest? How much of that payment goes to the interest? How much goes to the principal? Etc. etc. So let's go start. And B13, the beginning balance is the loan amount. So like I said earlier, I can just use the loan and set the accounting format. C13 is the interest. So the interest for $10,000 over 4.5% interest rate would be B13 times, open parentheses, because that's the rate at which I'm borrowing the loan. That's the interest rate for the first month. So if that's the interest, what's the principal? That would be your payment minus, supposed to round it. This needs to be constant. Accounting format automatically forms it to 148.93. So that's D13. So the total payment is obviously going to be this plus this. Make sure you have the formulas correct. Double check your formulas later. And the ending balance would be your total loan amount, the beginning balance, minus what goes towards the principal, because that's the cost of borrowing your loan. So we don't want to consider the total payment. You want to take out the principal from your ending balance. And that's your ending balance. The ending balance for the first month would be the beginning balance for the next month. So as you can see, we have all our formulas we need to fill out this. So let's go ahead and first fill this whole series. Double clicking wasn't working for some reason, so let's just go ahead and drag and drop all the way. And as you can see, the months are pre-populated, and well, don't be alarmed by these because we don't have these values. That's why this value is not being computed. But when we select all of these values and make sure all of these are accounting format, because we'll copy the format down too. So at this point, when I double click, it'll populate everything. And because we know the ending balance now, we know the beginning balance for the third month, and so on and so forth. And towards the end, you do not have any balance. Month 60, your principal is 0. That's how we do this. So before you do anything, you want to double check all these formulas for B13. And B13 is the loan amount. C13 is B13 rate 12, B13 times rate 12. And this is payment minus C13. This is C13 plus D13. And this is B13 minus D13. Double check and make sure you copy all your formulas. We've done all of this. Scroll and the loan balance reaches 0 and you are done. Home takes it to the first cell, first row, first cell. Now we go to the next sheet. So this part of the project is done. Now we work on the next sheet. I'm going to just go ahead and save my file. So at a glance, this tells me this is a list of all the courses that are offered and the department to which those courses belong. So pretend that I'm probably the dean of the college and I'm looking at this and I want to calculate how much cost or how much fees I'm going to get. So if we offer 12 sections of this class, how much money is that going to be? It's a simple multiplication. So select F7, credit hours times number of sections times the fee calculates total fees. So that is equal to credit hours times number of sections times fee credit per hour. The moment you put an equal to sign in front of in a cell, Excel automatically knows you're typing a formula. Two different ways to type a formula. You either put an equal to sign, or you could just go up here and do the same thing. Click. Equal to this times this. We could do it for all of those cells, or we could just simply drag and drop. So that's choice, but there's always the option to do the convenience of doing formulas. This is where we find it out. But before we do anything, we want to make sure this is currency format. And I double click this. So as you can see, all these bottom borders are dotted lines. And I copy this formula this bottom border also becomes a dotted line. We don't want that, so we want to set a single solid line border on that one. So we're done to make sure our table is not messed up. Okay, so now that's done. The dean wants to calculate, okay, how much is the total fee for the Department of Biology, Department of, I don't know what that means, foreign languages, maybe, I don't know, IMS in physics. So the total fees would be, whenever you add the total fees for all of these that only belong to biology. So how do you do that? There's a function called SUMIF. When you provide, so let's go ahead and do the SUMIF function. And I already have it in my recent. So the SUMIF function is looking for a range. It is looking for a criteria, and I don't know why this is optional. It needs to know what it's supposed to sum of. So, but anyway, so in the range, we're going to provide that, hey, I want to look up this whole set of cells, and I'm going to look for that particular string. And then if that particular string matches to this string, I want to add up all the values in this set of fields. Well, everything looks great except for when I drag this formula down, this point, if you can look, this is a perfect selection. It starts from F7 and F18 all the way, sorry, B7 to B18 and F7, F18 of my table. But what happens if I drag the formula down to another cell? If we look at it now, the whole formula range is shifted by one cell. If I do the same thing here, the formula shifts by 2 cells now, because this is a relative reference. When we provided this, we didn't give an absolute reference. So it keeps, the next cell would be B8 to B19 and F7 to F18. We want this to increment because, of course, we want our criteria to change. It shouldn't be biology all the time. It should be FRL and IMS and whatever it is eventually. So I'm going to undo what I did. Say okay. And I'm going to format it to currency. Accounting. And now I'm going to make these references absolute. That means no matter where I place my formula, this range should be the same. To do that, you do F4, and as you can see, put a $ in front of the row and the $ in front of the column, or vice versa. In some keyboards, you have to use function F4. Some keyboards, it would be just F4, and try it and see if that works. And we're going to do that for this. And not the criteria, because the criteria changes for each cell. That's how we calculate. I'm going to drag and drop the column. I don't want my formatting. I have to do it to currency, I guess. And there we go. That's the total fee for biology and FRL and IMS. As you can look at the formula, it changes based on what this value is. That's the SUMIF function. And there's another function called SUMPRODUCT that we'll mention. So the SUMPRODUCT calculates the product of 2 or more ranges. So let's go and see. What if I wanted to know the total credit hours of biology? That would be 36 plus 30. When you multiply these, this is 36. 3 times 10 is 30, and 4 times 8 is 32. 36 plus 32 is 70, and no, 60, and 30 is 90. So you should probably get 90 credit hours if you added up biology. But how would you accomplish it using a formula? So that's where we have a formula called SUMPRODUCT. And it takes argument array 1, array 2, array 3, which in this case would be that But we know that this is not all biology. Biology is only these 3 rows. So let's go back and change it to C9. And the number of sections would be, now we're not going to use absolute references because we're not going to copy this formula. We're actually manually inputting these values here. So for some reason it gives me an error. I'm going to look it up and says, oh, the formula omits adjacent cells. Yeah, that's what we want. So ignore our error, please. And do the same thing. It is a repetitive process. So I'm just going to do what's comfortable for me. So FRL is only these 3. These 3. Got 2. There you go. That's exactly what I want. You can go back to your file. And if the values are correct, you can go to the solution file and make sure that these values are correct. I know they're correct. So I'm going to make sure. Okay. Insert the current date as a function. So let's go to F20 and start typing dates. The function, it takes no arguments, as you can see. Type today. That's going to be today's date. Anytime you open this file, that would be the date as of which you open that file. It dynamically changes. The last step is to paste the range names. So click the new sheet button. Press F3, or in some computers or some keyboards, it'll be F function F3. And then do paste list. Auto fit the contents. And there you go. So this will give you a future review of your file. It gives that person a list of everything that's defined as a variable in this file. That's all. That's everything we need to do. Code my file. Where I saved this. 8 p.m. Yeah, that's all right. So, I hope I didn't miss any steps in my haste. Yep, that's about it.